Iran warns finger on trigger, as Trump says Tehran wants talks. Iran warns protesters who joined riots to surrender. Trump says U.S. Armada headed toward Gulf. Iran accuses 10 foreign intelligence services of plotting unrest. At least 126 killed in Iran protests, activists say. The commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards has warned the United States that Iran's forces have their finger on the trigger, as tensions remain high following mass protests and rising military pressure from Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly kept the option of military action against Iran on the table after the United States supported Israel during a recent 12-day conflict targeting Iran's nuclear and missile programs. Trump said Thursday that a U.S. naval armada is heading toward the Gulf, adding, "We're watching Iran." Iran was shaken by nationwide protests that began in late December. Although the demonstrations have subsided, activists say thousands were killed in a government crackdown carried out alongside an unprecedented internet blackout. Despite the heated rhetoric, both Washington and Tehran now say they want to give diplomacy a chance. Speaking aboard Air Force One, Trump said he would prefer to avoid conflict, but confirmed a massive fleet is being positioned near Iran as a precaution. Earlier this week, Trump warned that if Iran attempted to retaliate against him personally, the U.S. would respond with overwhelming force. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian accused the United States and Israel of fueling the protests as revenge for their defeat in last summer's 12-day war. Iran's top police chief has issued a stark ultimatum to protesters, giving those involved in recent unrest 3 days to surrender or face the full force of the law. National Police Commander Ahmad Reza Radin called on young people who were deceived into joining what authorities describe as riots to turn themselves in. He promised leniency for those who surrender voluntarily, saying they would be treated as misled citizens rather than enemies of the state. At the same time, Iran's government has pledged to address the economic hardships that initially sparked the demonstrations. In a joint statement, President Masoud Pezeshkian, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, and Judiciary Chief Gholam Hossein Mohseni-Ejei said officials would work around the clock to solve economic problems, but would also decisively punish those they label as instigators of terrorist acts. The protests mark one of the biggest challenges to Iran's leadership in years. Information remains limited due to an ongoing internet blackout, now in its 11th day. Despite this, the Iran Human Rights NGO says it has verified more than 400 protesters killed by security forces and warns the real number could be far higher. President Donald Trump says a U.S. naval armada is heading toward the Gulf, warning that Washington is watching Iran closely, even as he signals openness to diplomatic talks. Trump has repeatedly kept the option of military action on the table since the United States backed Israel in last year's 12-day conflict, targeting Iran's nuclear and missile programs. However, the likelihood of immediate military action has eased in recent days, with both Washington and Tehran expressing interest in diplomacy. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One after the World Economic Forum in Davos, Trump said the United States is deploying a massive fleet toward Iran as a precaution. "We're watching Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely," he said. At the Davos Forum, Trump stated that U.S. forces struck Iranian uranium enrichment sites last year to prevent Tehran from developing nuclear weapons, a claim Iran continues to deny. He added that Iran appears ready to talk. "Iran does want to talk, and will talk," Trump said. Iran's Revolutionary Guards intelligence organization says it has foiled a major terrorist plot allegedly orchestrated by foreign intelligence agencies to destabilize the country. In a statement reported by state media, the IRGC claimed spy agencies from 10 hostile countries took part in a coordinated plan formed after last year's 12-day war. The goal, it said, was to fuel internal unrest and encourage foreign intervention, posing what it called an existential threat to Iran's national identity and territorial integrity. The IRGC said the plot involved spreading violence, exploiting public gatherings, and using social media to incite riots. It also accused foreign political and security officials of directly supporting these efforts, including deploying organized criminal groups to increase casualties among civilians and security forces. Iranian intelligence claims the plan was defeated through security operations and public cooperation. According to the statement, authorities arrested 735 people linked to anti-security networks, summoned 11,000 individuals described as vulnerable to recruitment, seized 743 illegal firearms, and identified 46 people allegedly connected to foreign intelligence services. Activists report that at least 126 people have died in Iran's nationwide protests and the government's violent crackdown, with thousands more missing or feared dead. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency says the victims include protesters, children, civilians, and members of security forces. It also reports more than 41,000 arrests. Iran's government has given a much lower official death toll of just over 3,000. The protests began in late December after Iran's currency sharply collapsed. Demonstrations quickly spread nationwide and were met with heavy force. Authorities imposed an internet blackout, making independent verification of casualty figures extremely difficult. The unrest is described as Iran's deadliest internal crisis in decades, drawing comparisons to the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The United Nations and U.S. officials have raised concerns over possible human rights abuses, while Tehran accuses foreign powers of encouraging the protests.